Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the inaugural CAD-1 Masters Series of webinars. Sorry we're a little late. As with anything inaugural, there's always a couple little problems you run into. So thank you for your patience, and we're looking forward to this series. By the way, my name is Stan Henney. I'm the Business Development Manager here at CAD-1, but more importantly today we have Jason Pekovic with BCER Engineering, and Jason is, one of the guys on the front line, and that's what the Master Series is all about. Is we want to bring in folks that are really doing the day-to-day and really have been innovative in what they have done for their companies, and give you guys a perspective. Most of our viewers also are on the front lines too, but this gives us a perspective that's a little bit apart from our training staff, because you're going to probably pick up some good real-world tips here today. Now, I'm impressed with Jason. We had a conversation a few months back, and among the things that Jason does and has done for BCR and really moving them into the BIM age, he's also a great high-end photographer of show cars and things like that, and has a side business doing that. So real impressive guy. I hope today is fun. I do want to do a disclaimer. We have several MEP firms as our customers. We are not, while we are pleased to have Jason here today, we are not endorsing anyone company. We are just saying that this is somebody who we've had a talk with, and they really have something innovative to show, and the Master Series will be open to many other people who have great ideas, from whether it be MEP firms or whatever it may be. In our next Master Series presentation, for example, in March, we will have Sandy from Denver Water talking about their CAD to GIS initiatives and so forth. So we're going to mix it up a bit and have a great time with this. Also today with us here today we have Tony Crawford, who is our on-staff resident ME, and I'm going to back off here, and Tony's going to kind of co-host things. Now, what I am going to ask is that while Jason is a good presenter, he's presented at RTC, Revit Users, Revit Technology Conference, the Rhombus meetings here, things like that. Well, he's been to Revit Technology Conference and done a lot of stuff. Excuse me, he's shaking his head like, don't do that to me. But he's done presentations for the Rhombus meeting here in Denver, excuse me. And this is his first webinar, so I'm going to ask that if you do have questions, we will do our best to get them answered, but we are going to hold them today till the end of the presentation, just to make it a little easier and not wreck the flow too much. So with that, Tony, do you have anything to say before we start out with here?
I think you guys have a great introduction, Stan. Covered just about everything I could think of. And I hesitate to ask you, how many people are the slides? Does the slides look like they're cut off on the right edge? I know we've got Juliana mentioned that she's running into that, and it looks like we are on this end also. So if you've seen the screen flashing, that was me trying to fix that, and the setting is correct, but it's still cutting off. So I think for right now, we're just going to keep going and see if Revit shows up.
Change the display setting on the screen?
No, let's keep going forward for the moment. And what was I going to do? Well, let's try one thing really quick. Hit cancel on the slide and start the slideshow again. We're just going to reassert the slideshow. Yeah, it looks like it's getting cut off. So technology is wonderful. Bring all kinds of stuff together, and different pieces of it, different computer, different software, different versions. Yeah, it looks like it is being cut off, but we're just going to keep going because
people have said no big deal, and so we'll keep going. If it becomes a problem, we'll try and fix it. But anyway, with that, we have a couple introductory slides here, Jason, and Jason's got a couple polls because he'd like to learn a little bit about who's with us here today. So you want to bring those next slides up there?
Sure.
My friend?
You want to go over the
Yeah,
standard webinar one?
we'll go over this one. It's a standard webinar one, even though we've got kind of a cutoff screen here. Basically, most of you have been on a webinar, so you know this, but if you want to move the control panel out of the way, you hit the orange and white arrow. Hopefully, most of you are hearing us now, so, but if you aren't, I don't know how to tell you this, but, you know, if you can't hear us, but you got to be on either telephone, mic and speakers, or telephone. Most importantly, ask your questions. We'll try and get to them at the end of the presentation. And what is your next slide, sir?
A little background about myself.
There we go. All right. Jason?
Good afternoon, everybody. As Stan mentioned, this is my first webinar. I've presented before, but not through webinar form. I took this slide from my Rhombus presentation last year. It's a little background information about myself. My name is Jason Pekovich. I'm current BIM Manager for BCER Engineering. I moved here. I'm from East Coast. I moved here to Colorado back in March of '99.
From upstate New York?
Upstate New York.
Which is basically anything that's not New York City is upstate.
Basically.
I lived very close to that. I was in the Bronx for a few years before I moved here. So.
We don't say New York City back home. We say the city.
The city, yes.
The city.
And if you live in any of the other 4 boroughs, the city refers to just Manhattan.
Yeah. I graduated from Johnson Wales University in 1998 with just a CAD degree. When I moved out here, I started doing telephone drawing conversion using MicroStation.
Ooh.
Everybody's got to start somewhere. At least you moved up.
I've also worked for CH2M Hill doing runway layout lighting for the DIA-6 runway. Various other airport projects back then. But that was the biggest one.
Cool. How long was the design phase of that?
I think I worked on that thing for over a year and a half.
Okay. That's enough to get tired of one job.
I've also done structural truss layout for truss joists. More recently, in 2007, I moved to BCER Engineering doing mechanical CAD. And then in August 2012, I was promoted to their BIM Manager.
Cool.
In January of 2014, late 2013, officially January 2014, I was asked to be on the Rhombus committee because I was the most consistent MEP face that showed up to the meetings. Yeah.
And
I was, contributing.
And Rhombus is our local Denver BIM group, because I know several of you are not from the Denver area, so just so you know what that is.
Oh, true. Yeah, it's, what Stan said, Rocky Mountain BIM Users Group. BIM Information Society, sorry.
Yes.
Got to get the acronyms right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So as Stan mentioned, a couple of fun facts about myself is that I'm a car guy, a published photographer, and before you ask, I was born with a 6th finger, but it was cut off. I can't really show you a picture, but next time you meet me, ask to see it, and I'll show it to you.
He carries it around in his pocket.
Yeah, it's always, yeah.
The finger?
Yeah.
Oh, no, the pictures.
The pictures.
Sorry, I probably shouldn't make those jokes. It's not when it's being recorded anyway.
So what we're talking about today is the ins and outs and gotchas on project setup for MEP. Key to successful project creation starts with, and I'm going to leave that open-ended and fill that in during my slides. I'm going to talk about a couple add-ins I use for project setup. Some gotchas during project setup that when stuff doesn't show up correctly. And then standard upcoming events and CAD-1 services.
Sir,
cool. That looks good.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll let Jason run with it, and we'll try and keep our comments to a minimum so we keep the flow going.
If I'm moving too fast, please let us know.
Raise your hand or something on the screen there.
Or shout. And
you can type in questions too.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
So the first thing I want to talk about, project setup starts with a great template. no matter what kind of project, actually, you know what? I forgot to do my polls.
Oh, we can maybe throw those at the end.
Well, those
Go
kind of
ahead, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, let me do my polls
Cool.
first.
And Jason's being a bit of the guinea pig for us, so just bear with us on this. But this is important.
So the first poll is going to be, what discipline do you guys represent?
Cool. So you should be able to interact and select select which discipline closely. Which one do you want to associate with? What do you want to claim? We'll leave it up there for a few seconds.
Maybe which one do you not want to associate with?
Yeah, maybe all of the above. Go ahead and click on
Close.
Yeah, for the user, just click on it. We're going to close that out in like 3 seconds. 2. Looks like everybody's voted. 1. Wow, no structural on today. And looks like a lot of MEP, which is expected, and quite a few architecture. There you can see the results. So we'll take a look at that for just a second. So mostly MEP, but almost half as many architects as MEP. Go ahead and launch the next one. We'll leave that on the screen for just a moment. And so
next one is about how long have you been using Revit?
should I click the never? Let in on a secret that I've never. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's cool.
So
No nevers.
Pretty experienced user base.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So go ahead and show that one. And
So we'll close that one out. So if you haven't voted,
Tough luck.
yeah. So mostly, so
5 years plus. A lot of 5 years
yeah,
plus.
a lot of experienced users on this one. Okay, and I think is there one more question?
Yeah, I have one more poll, and it's what kind of type of projects do you typically work on?
All right, so the last one's closed out. Here comes the final one. The disciplines or the projects that you work on, multifamily or hotel, or the office, healthcare. I know a lot of the clients that I've talked to work on healthcare. Seems to be quite a bit of healthcare, as well as everything else. But commercial warehouse or other.
A lot of other. If you want to put in the comments what some of the other project types you're working on, so we can gauge that later on, that'd be great.
Yeah.
There's a lot more others than everything else.
Okay.
Close that out.
Close that one out. We'll
Share
that one. Alrighty. Cool. So now we know who's out there. Got quite a few people. A lot of other and commercial mostly. Cool. I'm wondering if a lot of that's or all of the above, as well as.
That's why multiple. You can select multiple. It wasn't just one.
Okay.
That question.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
all right, let's go ahead and we'll let Jason run with the ball here for a while.
How do I go back to that screen?
It should be showing your screen again. Oh, no. There it goes. It's just taking a little while.
We've got a little bit of lag. I guess.
Yeah.
Which
Watch that delay.
Went.
Cool. So starting off with a great template, do you typically have like a kickoff meeting with the architect and other team members?
Yeah.
A Revit specific one?
Yeah. Sometimes the kickoff meetings happen usually with the design team first and the architect, and then that design team comes back to the office, and then we have an internal kickoff meeting.
Okay. How much of that is like Revit specific, Revit questions, Revit answers?
Not much. It's more gauging what do I need to do during setup, what do I need to look for.
Okay.
Specifics of the project, deadlines, stuff like that.
And like how often you're sharing files? Is it FTP side? Is it new forma? Is it what different technologies? Other questions might be what version of Revit? Because if it looks like, since mostly we have experienced users, for anyone who's not aware, Revit is not backwards compatible. So everybody really needs to use the same release, same version of Revit. The architect's on 2015, you need to be on 2015.
Or 2012, you need to use 2012.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Other things in the kickoff meeting are Revit questions so that you can get started on the project?
Yeah, we'll typically have the kickoff meeting, and then I'll get the information that I need, and I'll go back to my desk and formulate my setup, how I'm going to get into the project and analyze the architectural model, what's going on, before I start my project setup.
how many models do you typically need to get the architects right away and the structural and other disciplines, or you just get?
We'll typically have the architect's model right away. Structural sometimes, but majority of the time we don't get that until DD sometimes.
Okay. Do you start working right away in SDs?
Uh,
the SD phase, do you work in Revit?
Very rarely.
Okay.
SDs typically for us have been narratives,
Okay.
maybe some CAD drawings, but
And that seems to be pretty typical.
architects have different definitions for SD. Like I just did a project where it was considered SD, but it was actually 30% CD,
Okay.
as much work as we did.
Yeah, and I know. I look like, unfortunately, I think most of the. I'm just trying to think of who's in there. That's why it's good to know who's in there before I say too much about structural or architects or. Wow, I completely lost my train of thought again. Not enough caffeine yet this morning.
Let's let Jason go ahead with the presentation here.
Yeah.
We'll keep things moving along.
So as part of a great template, there's several things that I want to highlight that you're going to need to have set up in order to make your workflow easier on yourself. The first thing I'd like to talk about is levels. Traditionally, the out-of-the-box Revit template has 2 levels set up. If you typically do a lot of multi-level projects, I suggest having 5 to 10 levels set up in your template already, with views created for those levels, and have those views be for each discipline. One ductwork, one electrical, one lighting, one power, one plumbing, underground.
So like levels all in the same place, a first floor level for electrical and a different first floor level for plumbing and a different.
Yes.
All in the same elevation.
In the same template. Yes.
Okay.
Then I also suggest having view templates set up and associated to those levels and views so that you can control how you want things to show on your plans. The other thing I'd like to mention is that in my template I have placeholder links. They're just blank architectural and structural links that I have linked into the project so that I can control visibility in those links through my view template before the actual project is even in there. This way I can turn off grid lines, turn off reference lines, and so that when I do link in the architectural and structural models, all that stuff is already set up and I don't have to go back into the project and remove all that stuff later on.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of view templates, like dozens and dozens of them, would you say? Or?
I do. I have a view template for each discipline. I have enlarged view template for each discipline, quarter scale and a half scale. I have an underground view template, and then I have a bunch of working and temporary view templates.
Okay, cool. And so that took a little time to set up, I'm assuming, sometime in the past.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming you kind of tweak those with every project, or at least earlier on. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, the enlarged template should have this. I'm going to add it to my project template.
Now, one template might not grab everything or do everything you need it to do, especially if you do multiple types of projects. But your one template should be a good starting place for most projects. If you have to, you may want to consider multiple templates for those different project types.
Different project templates, not view templates, but you get multiple project.
Yeah, actual templates
Like
for
one-
project setup.
Like one for commercial, one for residential, different templates. along those
Maybe
lines.
one for multifamily versus one for commercial
Okay.
type office stuff. It just depends on what your company needs.
Yeah, if you never work on multifamily, you probably don't need one of those. But yeah, or if not very often, you can use your standard template. And if it's one project a year, it might make sense to just keep using your normal template.
Yeah.
Tweak that.
I've also gone into my template and created a master sheet list that contains all of our standard sheets. And during setup, those sheets get created, but if they're not needed, then they're just deleted from the project.
Okay. We did have a question, which I will hold till the end.
Yeah, let's hold the questions and let Jason roll on into his, keep rolling.
Am I moving too fast?
No, I think you're moving
good.
pretty good, or maybe even we can speed it up a little bit for folks.
Well, are we on time?
Yeah. We're fine.
Sorry, that was a habit of mine to start to grab the questions right away, but we'll answer most of them at the end.
Now we're going to continue with the grade template format. You can take the sheets further and create actual sheets, not just the placeholder sheets, and then you can populate those sheets with information like a empty view. Just drag your view onto the sheet. The drawback to that is if the view is bigger than the sheet, then you're going to have to break it out and redo it later on anyway. So it's not really a recommendation, but it's an option for you.
So sometimes it saves you time, sometimes it doesn't.
No, yes.
But it's rarely would take more time because you're going to have to set it up anyway. So 50% of the time, if it works, then 50% of the time it saved you work. Would you say that was true?
Yeah, if you didn't have to break your views into separate sections, then and as long as it fit on the sheet, it would save you a lot of time. But
yeah, that makes sense.
But you're just dragging an empty view, and it's not really lined up from sheet to sheet.
Yeah, and it's hard to know exactly where in the coordinate system is the next project going to land because you don't know. You don't have the next project yet.
Yeah, because architect will the location.
It'll be slightly different place every time. Okay.
The next thing I recommend is cover sheets and legends. Excuse me. To have your cover sheets set up within your project with all the necessary information for your company, whether it's notes or schedules or abbreviations, your legend. Legends you can't copy and paste from project to project. You can't transfer legends from project to project, so it's best to have them created in your template so they're there already.
Do you have like more than you need in your template, and then just delete the pieces you don't need, or delete the views that you don't need, for specifically legends?
No, the legends, unless that specific discipline isn't getting used on that project, then all those legends are already there and on our cover sheets.
Okay, so the lighting legend, for example, might be the same from one project to the next project to the next project?
Yeah, it's those.
Okay.
Our legends are generic. Not everything is shown on this project type of thing.
Okay. I know some firms is very specific. In this project, we have these 7 light types. So these 7 lights appear on our legend. Even though so they might put 20 in the.
It just depends on your company. If that's what you want, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Every company's
and
different.
these are best practices that Jason and BCER have found that work well for them. So just take the suggestions and run with them if they help you.
Oh.
I don't know why they're all popping up at once.
All right.
The next I'd like to talk about is browser organization. You need to do something that makes sense for your company. For your views, organizing your views in your sheets. Right now, in my template, I have like a SD section, a construction document section, a working section, and I carry that through into my sheet organization. If you want to do like 100, 200, 300, 400 for your different sheet view types, then that's what you got to do. I'd recommend creating project parameters in order to accomplish that are tied to your sheets and your views, and then you just fill in that information, add that information to your master schedules, master view list or master sheet list, and then you can populate that information. I'm going to talk about these later, but if you had an add-in that took your schedules from Revit to Excel, and then somebody else can get in there and populate that information, then you can bring it back into your project. And you don't necessarily have to do it in Revit, but I'll go over some add-ins that I use later on. I also recommend keeping your content within your template to be light. It saves space and less. If it doesn't get used, then it's not there. You load in what you need, pretty much.
Like as you're going through the project, like if I'm the lighting designer, oh, I don't have a 8-inch can light. I don't have any recessed can lights. Then you load that at the time you need it?
Yeah, at the time you need it. I only recommend having your tags, your annotations, your duct, pipe, conduit, and cable tray fittings, which I'll talk about a little later.
That go along with the system families.
Yep. Anything else is fluff in my eyes, and if it doesn't get used, then it just takes up space in your project. And if you're doing a combined model, that could get 100, 200 megs, and half that stuff isn't even being used.
Okay. And that's something where I've seen different companies have different philosophies.
Yeah, I'll talk about the combined model a little later as well.
Okay, cool. So do you have scope boxes in there for putting scope boxes on views?
It depends on what is necessary for that project.
So you don't have it in the template, you add it to the project as needed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Scope boxes and plan regions will get created as needed.
Okay.
The next thing, most companies stemming back from Revit 2009, 2010, or 2011 created start views so that you can sync and relinquish your local copies of your project without having to regenerate the entire project to save time on that syncing.
Yeah, that seems to be a pretty standard practice. From the files that I've received, just technical questions like, my file's not working, and they'll send me a copy of it. Most of the time I do see those splash screens, the startup screens.
For us, those used to be views,
Like
which just had, dumb text and some lines and maybe some notes to the team on there that when you open the project, you would see it. I've since changed that to be an actual sheet so that I can utilize the project information parameters so that the project information gets filled out automatically on that sheet, so I don't have to go manually enter it back in
a second time. Yeah, that's anytime you
because our startup sheet has the project name, the project number, and just some key tips. I can bring that up. Let me bring that up.
I was just going to ask if you have a Revit file there that you could
bring that up real quick.
We'll take a quick look at that.
It's pretty basic. Just has project information, a link to our intranet page whenever that lag.
Yeah, there we go.
Picks up.
So
sheet size, some quick symbol commands, and a note to make sure that you're checking your work set.
Cool. So I see there's a number of things in blue. Is that typically the
it's
fields that show up automatically, like the owner, the project name, project number? So as soon as you type in the project information, do you type in the project information?
No, I'll transfer that from the architect.
So you never have to type it at all, in theory?
Mostly not.
But the project, do you use your own project number, I'm assuming?
Yes, we have our own project number.
So that's one
what
that
all the X's are.
Good.
Cool.
When your guys on your team within BCER, so basically, if do you set up the project, or do they have access to this and they go in and this is what they see at first? If they're taking the lead on something, how do you work with the team? Basically, is what I'm asking. What do you find some best practices for working with your team once you get this set up, or so that they're all adhering to the templates?
Communication, is key, and I have a 150-page procedural document for using Revit and various aspects of the stuff that we do day to day.
And that's for
and it's always growing.
Amazon.com, by the way. No, not really.
And there's still lots of stuff that I have to add to it, but it's about 150 pages now.
Wow, that's more than I got up to. Yeah.
All right, so you got, looks like next maybe MEP settings and project units, and
yeah, this will probably be, the next two sections are probably the bulk of your template setup. This is going to be the meat and bones. MEP settings, your duct sizing, your pipe segments, your offsets.
Routing preferences.
Oh, that's set up in Duct systems. That's next slide.
Oh, okay.
Project units. You want to make sure that the correct project units are being used, whether it's metric or imperial, and that the actual unit symbols if you want them to show, or turned on or turned off if you don't want them to show. And that the correct, instead, if you're doing length, maybe you want decimal inches instead of feet and fractional, or you just want fractional for a certain parameter.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that all that stuff is set up in your template.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot of.
You just gotta face the mic.
Oh my!
Oh,
The sound varies.
Sorry.
No problem.
Did somebody say that?
No, I just know it.
Oh. Then you have your fill patterns, your line patterns, your halftone underlay. This is going to be what looks good for you on paper or PDFs. On how the architect and structural models automatically halftone in a MEP when you have your view set to a mechanical, plumbing, or electrical discipline. But if you have a view set to architectural or coordination, you have to change your template to say this needs to be halftone because it's going to come in as a darker.
Yeah. Or if the architect put in shows plumbing fixtures or lighting fixtures, Revit sees those. Those are MEP objects, even if they're in architectural
And they'll show
file.
up, and if you have them set to a line weight that's thicker, then that's going to show up thicker. But that view may not want them to be thicker.
Yeah. So you're right. There's a lot of stuff in the template you can fix right away.
I also suggest on the line weights is that Revit comes with 16. Use all 16. Don't use the first 5. If you have, or 8. I've seen companies use just 8, and then everything else. If the architect might have something that's really thick, and it might contradict what you have.
How many, when you're coming from the AutoCAD side, how many line weights did you actually use there?
12.
Okay.
So in AutoCAD we have a chart that has all the colors assigned to different line weights.
CTBs.
And there was 12 of those sections. So 50 colors might be the same, different colors might be the same line weight.
Yeah, and I'm aware of firms that used, when they started using Revit, we can only have 16 line weights, that's not enough. We have some lines are .250 and some are .251 and some are .253. And this whole list, show me a drawing. You cannot tell the difference between a .250 and a .2 or .025 and 251.
Yeah, it's different, right? AutoCAD is in inches, but no, Revit's in inches, but AutoCAD is in millimeters.
The line weights. Yeah, that sounds right.
Mm-hmm. So there was 4 of them I filled in. I took the biggest one and made it 16, and then filled in a couple of gaps in between 10 and 16 for the extra ones.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I think from what I've done, I use most of the line weights. I think work well out of the box from what I've seen. For the firms that I've worked. Although the only one that I always have to change just for my own sake is the call-out line width. I always think that's too thin. But for the rest of them, I think most of the line weights are pretty good. But every company is different. Every company has different standards. For the most part, I think you can match your current CAD standards.
One thing I didn't mention in between MEP settings and additional settings is object styles. If you're trying, you got to make sure your object styles are set up correctly. What do you want everything? How thick do you want it to be? Using the line weights that you're using.
That's true. That's the first place to start setting line weights.
Yeah. Well, you got to set the line weights and then pick the line weights. I think is the best order.
Right.
Set them up and then pick.
Give it a value and then go to object styles and say the wall line weight is this and the duct line weight is this other one.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things, there's a lot of good points here and so forth. One of the things I see down there at the bottom, you've got panel schedule templates. And I think that's one of the big areas of interest that many people have. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Well, one of our electrical engineers has gone through and vetted the out-of-the-box panel schedule templates and modified them to work with how we use panel schedules.
Good. Yeah, I think not everybody does that. Jason, I'm wondering if you guys installed Revit 2015 R2. There was a mid-year release in September. They called it R2.
I'm still waiting on that.
It's kind of an R2 detail. Because there was specifically some panel schedule improvements with that.
I put in the request to the IT person. He's
Okay.
busy. So.
Well, for anybody else, specifically with panel schedule, they did do some improvements to that. Nothing huge, but the improvements were good. Like previously, like all the way up until September, when you add just adding circuits, it just puts them on panels on circuit number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then if you wanted to go odd numbers or left to right or 1, 3, 5, you had to go do that yourself. Now you can tell Revit, add it 1, 3, 5, go down one side of the panel and the other side of the panel, or you can do it by legs. Phase 1, fill up phase 1, and then phase 2, and then phase 3. And there's a couple other things, I forget exactly what is in it, but they did add some electrical improvements of the mid-year R2 release.
All right.
So what else we got?
Textiles and dim styles. I know personally we don't, or in our company we don't show a lot of dimensions, so we're just using the out-of-the-box dimension styles. But for text, we have probably 24 different text types within Revit for various things like details and notes, and in 14 and 15 you can assign text styles to schedules. So I've created schedule text styles just for use in schedules.
That makes sense.
So I don't end up modifying any of the other text styles.
Yeah, and I know I warn new users of that. Like before you modify a text style, maybe make a duplicate of it, because that one you're modifying might already be in use by somebody else in another place that you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So if you change this text, well, it looks good on my floor plan tag, but you just messed up the same text because it was in a schedule, and now it's just changed all the schedules. So as a user, that's something to be aware of. Okay, what else we got?
The last part of a great template, I'd like to talk about duct and pipe systems. Out of the box, you have 10 or 12 pipe systems created, and several, is it not?
Yeah, keep going. It might be disconnect. Sorry, there's technical difficulties on this end. So how many do you have, duct and pipe systems do you have in yours?
In ours, I have pipe systems. I probably have 40 of them.
Sorry, folks, we have a little bit of a lag today. Usually our internet's pretty good, but for whatever reason, it's lagging here. So.
I probably have 40 or so pipe systems.
Okay.
And I have
At least
10 duct systems.
Okay.
Or duct types.
Right.
And duct types. So the other part of the duct and pipe systems are duct, conduit, cable tray, and pipe types, which you can assign routing preferences to,
Right.
which goes back to the fittings that I mentioned earlier that you want to load into your project. So you want to load the fittings that you want to use in your routing for your routing preferences.
Yeah.
So you may have, like I have a sanitary waste system that has a Y-8 bend fitting, which is basically the same as my sanitary vent system, but this has a vent Y instead of the Y.
Yeah, so like if you're doing slope pipe, it needs a different Y than if you're doing vent pipes.
Yeah, so I have a different system for that, or a different pipe type.
Okay.
So here you can get crazy with some of this stuff. I mean, we have, like I said, 40 plus piping systems, which we have different abbreviations for, which we use in our tags, and we use in various schedules. All this stuff is tied together.
Yeah.
If we didn't care about the abbreviations or the actual what the pipe looked like, maybe we just keep the 12 systems. But each system used to have a different color. It has different line patterns. It has different routing preferences.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of information just in that.
With things like that, I kind of tell people, this is a guide. There's no fixed number. Maybe you can get by with 10. Maybe you need 50. You need to create as many systems as you need, but no more, because then it just gets confusing. But if you need to have 40, if you need to have 50, if you need 12, that's what you need to have in there, because different companies work different ways.
Earlier I mentioned maybe having multiple templates, right? So I just have the one template. I have a 2013 version and I have a 2014 version. The 2013 will get used on 13 projects, 14 will get used on 14 and 15 projects.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you restart with an out-of-the-box template every year, or do you upgrade?
No. Well, when I created the 14 template last year, I started with a brand new template, but transferred the information from my 13 template into it.
Using transfer project settings, standards.
Yep.
Cool. That makes sense.
So back to piping systems quickly. We have a lot of healthcare pipe, even if the project's not a healthcare project, it's in the template.
Right.
So our template's a catch-all project template type of thing.
Have you created a lot of your content, or do you get it? Is it out of the box? Is it manufacturer stuff? Where are you getting that from? That's a big question for a lot of people.
So as far as content goes, I've done several different things. I've taken the out-of-the-box content and modified it to suit our needs. I've downloaded manufacturer content, modified it to suit our needs, or I've built some stuff from scratch.
Mm-hmm. So all of the above. Okay.
I start out of the box. If I can't find what I need, I go to manufacturer. If I can't find what I need manufacturer-wise, then I build it.
Yeah, there's inherent problems with each. I mean, the manufacturer wants you to use some things and spec them and so forth, but sometimes there's things in there that you go, this is just way over the top of what we need.
Yeah.
But it's a chore sometimes to build your own, and so it's always interesting to people how other people are handling this issue and
when you
the setup. And
gotten manufacturer's content, how often is it just over modeled? There's too much detail.
A lot of the times.
Yeah.
Or they don't work. Right?
Yeah.
Like I've tried not
to name
Charlotte or Victolic, but I've had issues using Charlotte and Victolic fittings in my systems because the fittings didn't work correctly. So I just used out-of-the-box fittings for a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So the next step.
Before you go, I want you to go further, but we see this a lot with manufacturer stuff, and when you say it doesn't work correctly, it doesn't for what you need to do. I mean, we had a question on Revit Radio yesterday about this very thing, but it was with doors and windows from a particular manufacturer, and it wasn't working correctly. Well, the manufacturer can't anticipate everything you might want to do and everything that needs to be done, so they do kind of a general thing, or they do what they want you to do with it or whatever. It's always good to kind of watch out for that and see, okay, is this doing what we need it to do? We are having some real connectivity.
No, I'm just still trying. Sorry, I'm just a little OCD. I'm trying to fix the screen resolution because it's still cutting things off. I'm like, let me try something. So hopefully you can forgive me for doing that while we're also talking.
Well, we'll keep going here.
The next step to a great project setup is a great procedure. I talked earlier about my 150-page document. Not all of that is project setup.
And he sat down and wrote that in one evening.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine that's taken several years to compile that thing too.
A typical project setup for me, I have done in as little as 4 hours, but some projects have taken me 2 days.
Yeah.
It just depends on what the scope of the project is. If you have to create dependent views.
Yeah. Size and complexity. Are there 7 levels for level 1?
Yeah.
Like there's a raised floor and a drop floor and a sunken and a raised ceiling and
The majority of my time for project setup comes with placement of the views on the sheets and getting that all lined up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just a question for the audience. If you guys have any recommendations, are there any third-party programs for placing views on sheets specifically? But okay, what else?
Your procedure needs to work for your office.
Yeah, definitely.
It could be a catch-all procedure. It could be a specific procedure for a specific type of project. Mine's a catch-all procedure. Earlier I mentioned combined models versus individual models. Since 2013, we've been doing combined models.
Okay.
Combined MEP, FP, and soon-to-be technology.
In one big
In
file.
one model.
Okay.
We do that for connectivity so that we can take mechanical equipment and pull parameters for the electrical people, so that we can coordinate better within ourselves in ceiling spaces.
Have the file sizes gotten out of just unusable?
No.
Do you have to upgrade all your computers to $10,000 hardware? Or?
No, the biggest file size I've seen so far is 150 megs, and on average it's 75 to 100.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought it might be for a combined model.
Well, we had a project in 2012 that I had recently upgraded to 14 that was individual models. The mechanical model was 150 megs, the plumbing model was 150 megs, and the electrical model was only like 7 megs.
Huh.
But if you're going to do individual models, I suggest setting them up in the same model once,
yes,
and then breaking them out individually after the fact.
And that's what I've recommended, because for the way I explain it is every project's going to be different. I'm going to have to adjust my level 2 to match the building, and then my level 3. If I have 3 different files, I have to do that 3 times. If I do it in one file, then I set it up once and set my cropping, set the sheets, and then what I was doing is I'd set it up, whichever discipline got to me first, maybe electrical is first, I'd set up for electrical, then get the bugs worked out, and then do a save as mechanical, and just delete anything, make a 3D view and delete what was electrical. And now I have a mechanical plan, and it took me 20 minutes, or more, or less.
A little later I'll talk about a couple add-ins that I use to help me streamline the process. So my next slide. The last thing that makes a great project setup, if it would change, is a BIM manager.
Yep. Agree there.
A good BIM manager is always good.
A good BIM manager is good.
Yeah.
Sure. If you don't have one already, consider hiring or promoting from within a BIM manager so that he or she can develop these standards, train your employees, as well as create your standard content. As BCER's BIM manager, I typically perform all the project setups for Revit projects, but the procedure I wrote, anybody can follow.
Cool. And this is managing technology as well as maybe BIM standards enforcement, making sure people follow the standards, company standards. And
if they do veer,
you can
find out why, and
you don't just slap their fingers with a ruler. Or?
I tried the bat technique; it didn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
So a good BIM manager is going to make your streamlined project setup even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's not exactly what you said. I was going to try and add to it, but no, you said it.
A couple add-ins that I use for streamlining the process is that I have a BIM Manager Suite, which is good for, the main things I use it for are project cleanup, which I'll get an architectural model, and I'll purge all the views and sheets and then purge the model itself.
Yeah.
So it's a lightweight architectural model instead of some of them are 600 megs, right? If you're trying to browse around in that, then it's trying to regen that model plus your model.
That's a lot. That's a big file.
Yep. BIM Project Suite has a view creator and some element renumbers and some stuff like that you can use. BIM's Consortium is an add-in I found out about at RTC last year. It was made by Troy Gates for the LA Rug group, Revit user group. And he created an add-in that creates dependent views based on scope boxes.
Which one was that called again? Sorry, I'm going to...
BIM Consortium.
Okay, thank you. See if I can spell consortium.
So if you create scope boxes and place them on your views, give them a name, and then you just hit this button that says create dependent views based on scope boxes, and then it creates all your dependent views in a minute or two. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're right-clicking, create dependent or apply dependent views, and then renaming, that could take an hour, 2 hours, depending on how many you have to create.
Click and type and click and type and click and type.
Now, the downside to that is that it's going to say the name, dash, and then the name of the scope box.
Mm.
But you can always rename that later on.
Yeah.
But it's done in, a fraction of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a tool that I've seen some other power users were recommending when I was actually meeting with Autodesk a couple months ago now. And some like power users all over the place.
The other tool I use is Kiwi Code's bonus tools, and it has sheet placement or view placement on sheets based on a template.
And Kiwi codes have been around for a while. A fellow from New Zealand, Kiwi.
Hence the name.
Philip Miller.
Hence the name. But yeah, thank you. I really hear a lot of good things about those. So
Yeah, I'm using several tools from him actually. I have Family Browser for content management and Easy Keynoter for keynotes in 2015.
Yeah, and I'll vouch for the support on that one. I know I was using just the project browser, or not the project browser, the family browser, Revit 2012 probably, hadn't installed, and something crashed, and then, okay, hit submit report, it crashed, submit report. Like, I'm thinking, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's like 20 minutes later, I get an email, hey, Tony, I saw you've had some crash reports. Do you have more details? And I'm assuming that this is just an automated response, a computer thing. So I reply, by the way, is this a computer or a real person? He says, no, this is Philip. I was just having breakfast, and I saw your crash reports come in. I thought, seeing if I could help you out. Wow. Okay. I'm impressed. I've never gotten that from any software company before. Go ahead.
So I know we're running short on time, but I have a couple of gotchas during project setup that I'd like to mention. The first one is phasing and phase filters. If the architect or structural engineer are using different phase filters than what you have created in your project template, then the phase filter will default to none. And you will have to manually go in and change that in each of your templates. Or change your view or your phase filters to be the same name, and then it will automatically adjust.
If you take nothing away from this, this is certainly probably one of the best tips you can use here. Certainly,
yeah. Gotchas can cost you a lot of time. Yeah, what else?
Next one I have is hosted families versus non-hosted families.
Yes.
We typically use hosted families in our projects, mainly because when the architect changes the ceiling, the hosted family, or changes the wall, that family will move with it, and we won't have to manually go back and say, oh, well, now I have stuff in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
Or I'm cutting a section and half my diffusers are below the ceiling now. The caveat with that is if the architect or structural engineer deletes the host in their model, then you'll get a orphaned elements warning, and you'll have to go back and rehost it, which is, an easy couple second fix per element. But if you got if you got 1,200 elements, then but it's better than they were previously, where they would get deleted.
Yes, much better. And just a tip, because there's actually quite a few architects who are on this one. If you're working on a wall or a ceiling, and every item and element has a unique ID number, a serial number. And say you have a ceiling in there, and, oh, that's not the right ceiling. I have chipboard. I want to replace it with a 2x4. So you delete it and put another one in the same place. That really messes up the consultants, the Revit users. If they're hosting to that ceiling, Revit says, oh, okay, I was hosted to this chipboard ceiling. Its unique ID number, its serial number is 12349. And we get the new file. MEP gets the new file, and Revit looks at host. Oh, 12349. It's gone. There's another ceiling in the exact same place. But no, that's a different element as far as Revit's concerned. So all the things that were hosted to the ceiling are now orphaned, and they have to be one at a time, rehosted. You can do them room by room, but it's anyway.
Yeah, on the flip side of that, if you use non-hosted elements, you're going to have to manually go through every time you get a new model and see what changed.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they don't tell you what they did.
Do you ever do anything like, we were talking yesterday about some things, and one of our other presenters was talking about how they put in a very thin, say a 1/16 of an inch, just almost a film, but it represents the hosted ceiling, so you don't lose it.
If there's no host, you can always host to a reference plane.
Okay.
Create a reference plane in section or in plan to be your wall or to be your ceiling.
Yeah.
And then you can just move it up and down, and everything will go with it.
And I think
later
that's
on.
pretty common for HVAC, for hosting things to the ceiling and the mechanical side. I think that's fairly common, to use a reference plane instead of the ceiling. And
Yep.
you can put it just a hair below.
I was going to say, you don't want that to happen too often.
No. Okay.
The other gotcha I have is when linking in AutoCAD to your Revit projects, you want to make sure that the current view only is checked. Because if you're linking in something just for your electrical, you don't want it to show up on all the MEP views or plumbing views. You can always go back later on and relink it to that view that you need it, or just do a copy and paste aligned into the view that you want it to be in. I also would recommend taking your AutoCAD stuff, if you're going to use it a lot, to converting it to Revit so that you don't have a lot of AutoCAD linked in your project, because that takes up
Yes.
a lot of memory and could make your file size exorbitantly large.
Yeah, and so just make your files, as AutoCAD files, as clean as possible. Any unused, don't delete any unused layers, any unused objects, and it's absolute minimal hatching. If you could delete the hatching from the AutoCAD file before you link it in Revit, all the better. Revit really doesn't like AutoCAD hatching.
And that was the last of my presentation. I know we're trying to get to some questions here.
Cool.
Let's do that. There is one question from Juliana asked if perhaps we could get, or they could get a copy of the slides if they asked. That's up to Jason. He prepared the slides. They're really kind of his content, but mostly because they've been cut off and they want to be able to see the whole thing. So,
Yeah, if they want to...
send us an email and we'll get them to you then.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple other questions. I'm just going to start from the most recent one, just go from the bottom. Follow up for the architects. If they do need to change the ceiling, one thing that would really help out, if you do need to change the ceiling, keep the ceiling there. Just change the family, change the type.
Yeah, just
switch it out in the type selector. Deleting it is what takes away that ID number. Revit sees that element is gone, therefore the host is gone in the MEP file. So if you have a wall or a ceiling and it needs to change completely, if it's being used as a host for other stuff, keep the wall there and just change the family, change the type, just to another type. You can move it around, but then at least Revit can find that object.
Because it should maintain the same ID, just change the type.
For those of you who, this is meant to be an hour, and because of the technical difficulties that we had when we were getting started, we're gonna keep going for another 5-10 minutes here, try and get some questions answered. So if you have to leave, thanks for joining us. But otherwise, Tony, maybe you can read the questions, and Jason can try and get them answered, and you can add color to them.
Okay. Well, one quick and easy one is for those who do want the slides, is there an email you want to share? Is it, do you want to get
Just send it to me,
Okay.
Juliana, or anybody else who wants to get the slides. Why don't you? Can you type in down there? Yeah.
Yes.
Just hit the comment here,
Got it.
and then type in down here my email address, and then send to all, and it'll be up on everybody's screen on the question box in a minute.
Cool. So I'll put that in there. I'll just send that to everybody.
Yep.
Other questions? Sorry, we answered that one. Answer that one. Do you recommend a firm building their own Revit families that can be used in projects, or getting new families from manufacturers for each project, or maybe a combination?
It depends on what you need, right? If you want them to be standard families that you're going to use for all the time, then you would either download them and modify them to your needs, or build them. If it's a one-off family for this project, then I recommend downloading it from the manufacturer and using it for that project.
And maybe modifying it if needed. Download it and then clean it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
And Evelyn had some good point out a few good things. Using reference planes for hosting items, and then if you do need to move them, the example I use is like a gymnasium where there is no ceiling to host it to, but there's HVAC, there's lighting, maybe there's speakers, there's horns, whatever, all at the same height there, whatever, 24 feet above the ceiling, above the floor, whatever it is. You can move the reference plane yourself to adjust everything, or even if it's
as long as something that's not in that room isn't attached to that reference plane, right? So if you got a room that's maybe everything's at 9 feet, you put a reference plane at 9 feet, but then this room changes to 10, and you move that, then you got everything moving.
Yeah. So it might sometimes setting up reference planes that might seem redundant at first. like north wing ceiling reference plane and south wing ceiling reference plane? Or
It's just kind of, it sounds to me like it's a lot of awareness. Just,
yeah.
okay, we've got this attached to this reference plane or this hosted to this object, so this could happen down the road. Let's create another reference plane if we want to keep that independent or whatever it may be. It's just some awareness, and I think that's another area where a good BIM manager can help with the process in a company.
Yeah, definitely. A couple questions on the add-ins. Are they free? The Kiwi codes, the placing on the sheets, the BIM consortium?
BIM consortium is free. The Kiwi codes bonus tools is $35 a license.
They're really cheap.
But you get 42 tools with that license.
Oh, okay.
And if you buy in bulk, you get discount. I think I've seen it as low as $25 for 50 plus licenses. BIM Manager Suite is, I think, $1,000 per license, but then you can get like a network or a site where, but there's free versions. So the BIM Manager and Project Suite have free tools and they have paid tools. The project cleanup and the other tool that I use mainly from the BIM Manager Suite for project setup is a free tool.
Cool. Yeah, there's both out there. I know I've looked at.
I mean, there's tons of tools that do similar things, but these are the ones that I'm using day to day.
And you've tested out a few of them. Some of the other ones recommended, just in some of the questions, Rushforth projects, and I just lost cases. There's a couple of those that I've used.
I have Case downloaded, but I haven't used it in a while.
And tools for Revit, and yeah, that's one that I've definitely looked at. There's a few.
We're a representative for tools for Revit.
Is that no?
So yeah, if you need help with,
I think I have the sheet views to sheet for tools to Revit, but I didn't like it.
Yeah, there was a number of things in there. I saw some were useful for architects, a few were useful for MEP, a lot were generally useful. So yeah, if questions on tools for Revit, or if you're looking at those, we can help you out with those specifically. And that's, I think we've hit most of the questions now. I'm just going to read through them quickly. So thank you for the comments. You know, what other disciplines, what type of projects that you worked on. So like DIA projects, somebody's been working on for the last 3 years. Let's see, anything else? Oh, question.
That's what I forgot, airport.
Do you know of any add-in that allows you to import from an Excel spreadsheet to a Revit schedule?
So I believe Ideate Tools will let you import an Excel schedule and bring it into Revit and create a Revit schedule. When I tested that, I believe it creates a new parameter for each header.
And there's a company here in Denver called BIM Shift, and they have some tools that will do that as well. Their life cycle tools will do some fantastic moving back and forth between not only Excel sheets but even SQL and some of those. So again, we can hook you up with them. They're not associated with us, but they're good friends of ours.
The BIM Project Suite as well has, from CAD Technology Center, has a spreadsheet link which will take your schedule from Revit to Excel and then back into Revit. But it actually pulls up a spreadsheet so you can do your spreadsheet work within Revit, so you don't necessarily have to go out to Excel. But there's another tool in that package that's called Spreadsheet Drafter that takes your Excel file and brings it into Revit, but it makes it lines and text.
Oh, okay.
So if it's a one...
Oh, yeah. That's... yeah, it depends on what you need it for. Juliana added that the Rushforth does some of that as far as the sheets and taking information from Excel. One question for the audience. I did send the email out, but it looks like it might not have worked. I'm going to try it again using another tool on here. So if the email doesn't come through, well, it's Stan's email, so that you can ask him if you want a copy of the slides. And
another thing that I'm going to put in a plug for, I think probably, did you go to AU, Jason?
I did not go to AU. I got to go to RTC. That was,
yeah.
It was one or the other.
Then you've run into it at RTC. I am very impressed with Dynamo. Now, most of us have seen things like Dynamo for twisty-turny buildings and all sorts of crazy surfaces and so forth. But they had several workshops at AU this year on practical uses of Dynamo. Dynamo is a programming tool for Revit and other things. I was blown away. So this goes back to the question about moving data back and forth between Revit and outside sources. There's some excellent tools from CASE and other organizations for getting into Dynamo and being quite effective with it. And you're going to hear a lot more about Dynamo in the future. A lot of potential there.
Yeah, I think I saw a blog post about someone taking Excel and bringing it into
Yes, exactly.
Revit and making schedules from it.
Exactly.
Cool.
So, anything else, Tony?
I think I got all the questions. If I missed yours, I apologize. I didn't mean to. So I think that's good. It's
Jason, what are maybe the top three things? I think your gotcha points are good, but what are the top three things that you think are important for people, real quick, as we leave this webinar?
For project setup, or just in general?
Just in general, just kind of recap. Good template, good setup procedures. What else do you think are
A great team.
and a
Whether
guy who
it
can
be
photograph cars well?
Yeah. Whether it be BIM Manager or Revit users that know what they're doing.
Well, we laugh, but
no, that's important. That's why it's.
if you're going to be setting up projects, you should know what you're doing.
yes, exactly.
It's just not. It doesn't stop at project setup. It's going to continue through the life of that project, whether it be maintenance or cleaning up new architectural models every other week.
So good training for the users so that they know what they're doing,
Yeah.
and we can definitely help you out with that. Just let me throw that plug in there.
And
I can help you out with that.
To close out, go ahead.
A good team, a good procedure, a good template. It's probably my key points for project setup. And
Excellent.
then, anything you can utilize to help make that better, through add-ins or a good BIM manager or something like that.
So with that, we got to close out. We won't take any more of your time, but we appreciate you joining us today, and we very much appreciate Jason being the inaugural guinea pig for the Masters Series. We kind of put him through a lot. We learned a lot of lessons about communication ourselves here and how to do this better, but appreciate it, and we'll hope to have Jason back maybe later this year to do another presentation. It was very good. If any of you are interested, we would welcome ideas from you and let you do a Masters Series for us. And with that, I wanted to put in a plug. If you're in the Denver area, the Denver area Rhombus meeting is next Tuesday evening. Is that the 20th?
Yeah, Blake Street Tavern.
At the Blake Street Tavern.
6 o'clock.
And there's also a great group up in Boulder, the Boulder Building Technology Group, that meets the first Tuesday of every month. So if you're more up in the Boulder area, that's another good one to go to. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jason. And we will sign it off now.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.